Hey everyone, welcome to the NFL edition of the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for November 29th, 2016, brought to you by Fantasy Labs. I'm Matthew Friedman, the editor-in-chief. A quick note, we are recording this much earlier than we normally do on Tuesday because one of our regulars will be unavailable later. Apparently he's on the run hiding from beer money loan sharks because after last week, he definitely owes some people a lot of Coors Light. I'm, of course, talking about Peter Jennings. He and Adam Levitan are on the show. You can follow them on Twitter at CSURAM88 and Adam Levitan. And also joining the show is Eric Crane at Eric Crane. He's a contributor to Roto Grinders, a former professional poker player, and the winner of this year's Week 8 DraftKings Millionaire Maker. Eric, how's it going?
I'm doing good. It's nice to be here. I feel like I'm big time now. I'm on the Fantasy Labs podcast. I mean, this is the podcast to be on. So I'm feeling very special right now.
Well, if it's making you feel better, the guests that we've had recently have been on a very good hot streak. So it is the show to be on. How was Week 12 for you?
Week 12, well, I wish I would have come on before Week 12 if I would have known a hot streak was a thing after that. No, Week 12 we were very close with some big numbers. I lost a little bit. I got second in a few qualifiers for the FanDuel Live Final, and it was okay, but Week 13 is going to be better.
Yeah, Levitan and Pete, how was Week 12 for you guys? Actually, before I ask that question, which I already asked, I should say that I know it was good for Jonathan Bales, who won a qualifier to the Fantasy Football World Championship, so congrats to him. How was Week 12 for you guys?
Go ahead, Pete.
Well, starting off the week, I won the Thunderdome on Thanksgiving, so I thought I was on to a hot start, and then I proceeded to lose significantly more than I won in the Thunderdome on the main slate on week 12. So it wasn't good. When you lose more than the Thunderdome winnings by a good margin, it's not good. But yeah, I probably did better in week 12 than I did on the skill game props. So Levitan, what about you, man?
Yeah, I ended up not playing Amari Cooper on DK main slate, which kind of made all the difference in the world. Because if you didn't play Cooper on DK main slate, you probably did pretty well. So. And I didn't play Cooks and I didn't play Gates either. So I ended up doing pretty well main slate, but I did have Cooper on FanDuel main slate, which obviously was pretty brutal. But I had a really good 1 p.m. only. Got on LaShawn McCoy, had the Breeze-Thomas combo at 1 p.m. only on FanDuel. So basically I think you needed to have Breeze, Michael Thomas to win pretty much anything last week, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, in terms of skill game propositions, Peter extended his streak of not breaking above 500 to 5 straight weeks, which I didn't even know that was a streak that was running until I went back and did the research. Peter, over the last 2 weeks, you are 8-21. Last week in particular, you got slayed. Well, we all got slayed by guest David Kitchen, who won every single time that all three of us went against him, which is just kind of incredible and very sad. On the season, Levitanimal is now 62-49. Pete is 63-72, and I'm 38-35. Eric, our last 5 guests are a combined 43-19. So what is your plan to keep that hot streak going? And then I guess more seriously, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you won the DK Millie Maker about a month ago. Can you talk about your DFS process, and has your process changed any since you won the Millionaire Maker?
Well, my plan for the skill game props is just not to screw it up. That's pretty much the goal, and also that's kind of my process too throughout the week. I a lot of the time I'll start. This is about when I usually start. Wednesday, a lot of the good articles come out that I like to read. I'll be looking at a lot of Pro Football Focus. I subscribe to their premium statistics, so I look at a lot of that. I look at a lot of individual matchups. One of my favorite things to do is kind of figure out, where tough shadows are going to be coming from, and then from there, I kind of start going to the other side. Like that's how I ended up on a lot of Taylor Gabriel last week, just because I know he was going to be going at Cooper, the terrible second corner for Arizona. My process is just I do kind of my own game breakdowns, like you see J.M. Tulane doing that on Roto Grinders. Evan Silva does that on Roto World every week, and I kind of do my own thing for that, compare it with a lot of other stuff, and try not to screw it up too much.
That sounds awesome. Well, it's really going to be great having you on the show to talk about some of these players. For everyone listening, we're focusing on roster construction and game theory. For more content on the slate, check out our NFL dashboard with positional breakdowns out on Thursday and previews for each game out by Friday. All right, Eric, let's start with you, and let's talk about some of the guys that you are looking at right now, thinking that you might lock some of those guys into your cash game core. Who are some of those guys?
I mean, you have to have exposure to the Saints game this week. I mean, this thing just sticks out like a sore thumb when you look at the total. I mean, Drew Brees is obviously there for cash games. I mean, they love to throw in the dome. We know the Detroit quarterbacks aren't anything to really be scared of. And I'm going to have some exposure to all sides of that game. Theo Riddick is interesting early on. Marvin Jones, I'm interested to hear what you guys think about Marvin Jones because he's been as inconsistent as it comes, but at the same time, that price is so attractive. If I can find some value, I love David Johnson this week. Jordan Reed, if he's healthy, is there. And if I'm not going to take Breeze or Stafford, I'm going to be looking at Tom Brady.
Levitan, let's go to you. Any thoughts on Marvin Jones, then any other players you're looking at for this week?
Yeah, so me and Pete were on Pete actually got me on, I'll blame him, got me on Marvin Jones, and I looked at it. I ended up really liking Marvin Jones on Thanksgiving, and I think what we can say about Marvin Jones is that a lot of his bad games have come in really difficult matchups. Like, he's had a run of relatively difficult matchups, and obviously this one is going to turn out to be pretty easy. So on my first look at DraftKings salaries, like, I didn't see hardly anybody below 5K that I really liked. Like, literally, we could probably make a case for Marquise Wilson. We could maybe make a case for DGB. We could maybe make a case for Jeremy Hill or Dion Lewis or somebody like that. But I really didn't see a lot. So Marvin at 44 playing every snap against the Saints in a game with a total around 54 is going to be appealing to a lot of people. So even though he's been so bad, I do think that we'll see him get up into the 13, 15% range right now, maybe even higher. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know about playing Marvin in cash. It's possible. But I think another thing about DraftKings this week is look at the running back salaries. I mean, David Johnson is 9,500 and Le'Veon Bell is 9,200. Like, how are we going to play those guys if we don't have anybody below 5K? So from that perspective, I think it's really interesting too.
Certainly a tough roster construction week at first glance. I like Marvin Jones a lot. I have been willing to roster him more than others recently, which hasn't paid dividends. But no, there's a lot of trends around, paying, a significant discount relative to where Marvin Jones was. I mean, he was above 7K for 3 straight weeks. I think he got as high as 7,600. Now he's 4,400 against the Saints. Obviously, there's a lot of variance in his performance, but in this spot, I expect him to at least get some volume, and he could really have a big game. So we're desperate for savings. I think he'll be an intriguing play. The running back position is tough. I think we're going to have to find some guys we want to save with. Eric mentioned Theo Riddick. I think he'll be interesting to look at. The Broncos situation now against the Jaguars is going to be intriguing. Booker's price has come down. Not sure what's going on with Bibbs yet, but that's someone that I think might end up being somewhat popular. We'll see how the week breaks, but it's definitely a tough week in terms of value, which is going to make it tough to fit these other guys that would be chalk. Drew Brees, David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown. So it's a tough week so far at first glance. Hopefully some news breaks.
Any thoughts on Jordan Howard as a potential guy going against San Francisco, which is obviously is horrible against the run, cheaper than Le'Veon Bell, Johnson, MG3, some of those other guys? Any thoughts on him?
Yeah, so I just looked at that. One of the things that we have to at least be aware of is that Kadeem Carey and Jeremy Langford are both healthy. So we can't say for sure that Jordan Howard's going to touch the ball 20 times. But last week, he handled 87% of the Bears' running back touches. So if we can project him for that again, and I think they want him to get that kind of workload, he just has to play well from the beginning. So if you can project him to play well from the beginning, John Fox leaves him in there. I mean, I think we can project 20 touches against San Francisco at home. A lot, I think, depends on what you think of Matt Barkley. Like, if we think Matt Barkley can move the ball again against San Francisco this week, which I don't know, maybe, that's obviously a big factor for Jordan Howard too, because he's going to need to get into the end zone. So, I mean, 6,900 is a little bit more than I'd like to pay. My first glance is I liked Carlos Hyde and I liked Doug Martin more, but mostly because they're cheaper.
Yeah. Eric, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have no problem with Jordan Howard, especially if we hear this week that he's going to be the guy. I mean, obviously a prime matchup. It feels a little weird paying almost $7,000 for Jordan Howard, but he's sitting there at 6,900. Another guy that I just kind of looked at, and I haven't completely thought about it. What about LeGarrette Blount against the Rams? I mean, he's just 5,500, and I understand on DraftKings we want those catches, but I mean, in a game where they're almost 14-point favorites, I mean, that's a price that's going to be tough to talk myself out of.
I'm going to be having trouble buying the Garrett Blunt, but I haven't been the Blunt whisperer at all this year. I've been totally off on the guy. The one time I did play him, I think was against San Francisco, and it was one of the times he didn't score a touchdown. So my issue with Blunt is I think Deion Lewis is the most talented back they have in a variety of different ways. They're starting to get him the ball more. So there's just a lot of mouths to feed. I mean, you think about James White's going to get touches, Blunt's going to get touches, Deion Lewis is going to get touches. So on the Bears side with Jordan Howard, I actually think Cam Meredith is interesting as a value play too. You look at his last game, obviously it was terrible in terms of production, but he did have 9 targets. He's only 4,100. You know, Dave Kitchen was right on Matt Barkley on the show last week, so or at least relatively right. But yeah, it's a tough week in terms of all these plays. I mean, I like Carlos Hyde too. I mean, Adam, you think the Bears are like the least talented defense right now with all the guys beat up?
Oh, my God. I mean, who knows who they're going to find out and suspend this week? I mean, it's unbelievable. Every week it comes out that the new one of their players is getting suspended for PEDs. So, yeah, I mean, no Danny Trevathan this week we found out. So, yeah, I think that they have as little – the Browns for sure have more talent. Like, the Browns at least have Pryor and Corey Coleman and Barnage. Like, they have some players, Joe Hayden. Like, the Bears just have no players whatsoever. So, yeah, I think Carlos Hyde is a way safer floor for touches than maybe people give him credit for at 5,300.
One more guy I want to run by you is Sammy Watkins going against Oakland. Pretty cheap, right? I think around 5,500. Any thoughts on him?
Oh, yeah. I think he's going to end up being popular. I mean, he played 25 out of 55 snaps last week and looked good. I mean, caught all 3 of his targets for 80 yards, comes out of the game healthy, and now beat reporters are speculating he'll play 35 to 45 snaps. Well, I mean, Tyrod Taylor only drops back like 30 to 35 times in a game. So we're talking about Sammy Watkins being out there for a majority of Tyrod Taylor's dropbacks. This is a guy who was 9th in the league last year in fantasy points per snap, and now he's playing the Raiders. Like, I think at 5,500, he'll be very popular.
Yeah, and plus with like Oakland's cornerbacks, I mean, they have trouble with those shifty receivers too. I mean, I could see Watkins. He was kind of on my contrarian stacks list, and I'm surprised he said that he'll be chalky. I sort of expected this to be the last week that we could get him at low ownership, but you really think he's going to be popular?
I just think people are going to be looking to save so badly that like they're going to have to jam in like Marvin Jones and Watkins and Hyde, like guys they normally wouldn't play. You know what I mean? So because I mean, no matter what DraftKings makes DJ and Le'Veon and Antonio Brown, like people are still going to play him. Like they're still going to be 20, 25%. You know, they could make them 11,000 and they'd still be 25%. You know.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you're going to need the savings. This isn't like, you know, the beginning of the season where you could just play Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, all these guys in the low 7K range, and you had a, you know, punt receiver, punt running back that made sense, and you could just get everyone you wanted. You really have to scrounge for guys, and that was kind of the case last week as well, and we saw a lot lower scores, so I'll be curious to see how it plays out. The one thing that makes me optimistic about potential high scores is we do have some games that could shoot out. You mentioned Sammy Watkins. I mean, if he has a good game, you could see this game turn into a shootout. Oakland has been throwing the ball really well. Obviously, Cooper had a bad game, but there's a lot of opportunity for this game to potentially have a lot of fantasy goodness. So we'll see what happens. I definitely think a lot of different roster constructions will make sense, and I don't know how many guys will be like really, really chalky this week.
Well, real quick, my initial run here I had Sammy Watkins at 9 to 12%, but you know, if people like millionaire Eric Crane are talking about him and stuff, then he could get up towards 20%.
Oh, you really you think my reach goes a little bit farther than it really does, I think. But hey, I got one other value guy that just kind of looked at. What about Tyreek Hill? What do we do with him against Atlanta? 46.
Go ahead, Pete the Freak.
All right, so there's so many things about last week that are just so frustrating for me. I've been on Tyreek Hill all year long, and the one week that mine was absolutely off. I've been touting that he could score touchdowns in a multitude of ways, and then he goes on and scores, a kick return touchdown, a receiving touchdown, running touchdown. I mean, the guy is as athletic as anyone in the league. I mean, is there a guy that's more athletic than Tyreek Hill right now? No one Levitan?
He's basically a good Tavon Austin.
Oh, he's way better than a good Tavon Austin. He's a little bigger, and Tavon Austin's a freak, but you see the speed that he has. Even on like those jet sweeps where he almost missed the ball. I mean, he makes up so much ground with that speed. I think he's going to be a big part of their offense going forward.
Yeah, I like it. I think he's a guy I mean, obviously, cash game feels dangerous, but if you're not playing him in some tournament lineups, I mean, it feels like you're taking a risk there. Let's talk about some of the guys who might be chalky that we would be looking to pivot away from. And I think maybe a place to start would be that game in New Orleans, which is going to have a lot of points. And Levitan, let's start with you. Let's look at just some of those wide receivers. You have Michael Thomas, you have Cooks, you have Snead. We obviously talked about Jones, but you have Tate. Some people might like Anquan Bolden because he's cheap. Any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, so it's going to be hard for a lot of those guys to get really high owned because people are going to want exposure to all of them. So I don't think we're going to see like huge ownership, and everybody got burned by Cooks last week. So I can't see Cooks being more than like, 12, 13, 14%. I think the guy who'll be the most popular in this game, honestly, this might be crazy before the week is over, is Josh Hill, because he's 2,500 on DraftKings and everybody's looking for savings. And I know there's going to be people that are talking up Josh Hill. I mean, Kobe Fleener only ran 12 pass routes last week, I believe, and Josh Hill was up around 26 or 27, played well. I feel scary to me, but 2,500 and we're so desperate. Like, I've really been trying not to do this with my lineups about playing these tight ends who could end up with literally like 2 catches. But, I mean, we're really desperate for savings. So if we can think Josh Hill is going to play a ton against Detroit for 2,500, I think he might end up being one of the most popular guys in this game.
Here, Eric, what do you think about Josh Hill? But then who are some of the guys you think might be chalky that you would be looking to pivot away from?
I hadn't really considered Josh Hill that much, but it makes sense. I'm sitting here, I got my season-long team, and I'm just sitting here staring at Kobe Fleener, just going, oh, what have I done? Because I'm so excited about drafting him early, and next thing you know, something named Josh Hill is passing him up. It's definitely a way to make some savings. I look at this game, and this is going to be a game where I'm going to get exposure to on every lineup. Like, I'm going to have, at least one of these guys in every lineup. As far as other guys that are going to be chalk, do you think, I understand Breeze is going to be chalky. Do you think Stafford will be chalky too?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where if both those guys are going to be chalky, what other chalky quarterbacks are there going to be out there? I think we're going to see such high ownership on this game that I think guys like Brady, I think a guy like Roethlisberger is going to be completely overlooked, even though he's playing at home against a bad pass defense. I think there are a number of ways, like at quarterback, and just as far as wide receivers and running backs go, that you can pivot off of some of these chalk guys. I think Roethlisberger is a great play this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have Roethlisberger at 5 to 8%.
Yeah.
I think Roethlisberger makes a ton of sense. We know the home road splits for him are massive. I think Antonio Brown will be someone that will be pretty popular. I know, Adam, you have him ranked pretty high. The issue I have with him, and I still think he's a good play, is just the opportunity cost. I think that there could be, a lot of people on him versus someone, say, like Julio Jones, who could still be a really interesting play. Obviously, people got burned by Julio last week. It was a really tough matchup, but the perception, I think, that Julio's in a really tough spot here against Marcus Peters just isn't a reality. Obviously, Peters is playing better, but Julio's going to see a lot of different guys, and I think he could have a really big game. We just saw Emmanuel Sanders go off, and that's a pivot that I think makes some sense. Antonio Brown went off on Thanksgiving. Everyone saw that. Pivoting down to Julio Jones, I think, is interesting. Mike Evans, too. I'm not sure how the ownership's going to break down with these guys, Mike Evans, Julio, and Antonio Brown, but there's definitely some opportunity there where it's going to be tough to fit these guys. You can't play Le'Veon Bell and Julio Jones in a lot of lineups. There's just not enough value. So curious your thoughts on that, Adam. How do you think the ownership's going to break down?
Yeah, I don't have anybody really high. I think Antonio will be the most because he's the safest right now for sure. But yeah, I don't think Julio or Mike Evans will get above 20, 25%, maybe even less, unless we have something happen here with an injury or something like that.
And I guess I should always say that it goes without saying, but Levitan suggests that you pivot away from OBJ, whoever they're playing. Just pivot away from Odell Beckham.
Yeah. When you can just run a 5-yard slant and the dude outruns 11 guys, why not roster him? You know what I mean? It makes no sense.
All right, let's talk about some of the conventional stacks that you guys might be looking at. And Pete, let's start with you. Who are you looking to tie together for your GPPs?
All right. Well, I'm going back to Breeze and Cooks. That's a lock. I mean, I hope it's not that owned. It was super frustrating. I definitely got burned by that. Got some, mentions about, Cooks sucks. This is terrible for me. Believe me, I was right there with you guys. For anyone complaining about Cooks, it was expensive there. I think it's still a good play to go back to. Michael Thomas's price has come up. His price has not. He's 500 cheaper now than him. So I love that stack, running it back with Marvin Jones, all the disappointing guys, but I think it makes sense this week. Another stack that I think could be really interesting is Brady to Julian Edelman. We'll see what breaks with the whole Patriot situation, but I think that's a conventional stack. I like a lot of the Patriot stacks here. Really high team total for the Pats against the Rams.
Eric, how about you?
Are people really not going to go back to Derek Carr after last week? Is Carr to Cooper not going to be popular?
I don't think it will.
Be quiet about that one.
I mean, Carr is 6,500. Cooper's sitting there at 7,300. And I find it really hard to believe that, especially a guy like Carr, when he's 1,000 cheaper with the same upside as guys like Brady, Roethlisberger, Stafford, is just going to be unowned. And I at first look, and again, we're only on Tuesday, so a lot can change over the next 5 days. But at first look, I am really excited about Carr to Cooper being unowned.
Yeah, Levitan, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if this is conventional. This is probably more contrarian, but I mean, I could see that Tampa-San Diego game getting into a shootout because I think Rivers is playing so well, and we've seen the Tampa secondary just get flamed up a little bit. So if that's the case, we could see Jameis with a lot of attempts here. And, I mean, Mike Evans is they just have nobody else to go to. It's just crazy how much trust Jameis has in Mike Evans. So if everybody's going to be on Le'Veon and DJ and Julio and Antonio Brown, maybe we can get Jameis, Mike Evans pretty cheap.
Yeah, and you had a rhyme there. I mean, Phillip Rivers is playing so well, he can throw to Tyrell the Gazelle, like that. There we go. That's a stack I like a lot. Tyrell looked good last week too.
Yeah.
Tyrell is good. Like, he's just a good football player. I think we're kind of past the point of saying, oh, he looked good. Oh, he might. No, he's a really good football player. In San Diego, they always find these guys off the street. It's unbelievable. But, I mean, Tyrell's another one of those guys who's a really good pass catcher. Guy, can you imagine Keenan Allen in this offense, by the way?
Oh
man, he'd be going off this year.
Oh, every week he would just be crushing it.
Yeah, he would have been one of the top. I mean, his price would be in like the 8K range for sure.
Yep. But instead we get the Gazelle.
Yeah, the Gazelle, man. I'm. There's a lot of stacks. I like that. This week sets up really well for tournaments and a lot of recency bias that we can capitalize on.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those contrarian stacks because I think there are a few that are really interesting. And Eric, let's start with you. Who are you looking to tie together that you think is going to go under the radar a little bit?
I mean, do we think David Johnson at 9,500 is going to be super popular?
It's so hard. I have 26, but I mean, it's so hard to tell right now.
Okay, so what about, this, I'm going to kind of tie into something I did last week with Taylor Gabriel. What about David Johnson and Pierre Garçon? If it looks like Deshaun ends up getting shadowed by Patrick Peterson, which we don't know if that's going to happen, all of a sudden that we get that Arizona running game plus starting catching some passes. What do you guys think of that?
I think that's interesting. This whole Redskin situation is going to be tough to figure out. I mean, that's the part that's hard. I mean, is it Garcon? Is it Crowder? Jordan Reed, we still don't know the status of. I'd be Adam. I don't know if he's going to play. I don't know.
Yeah, he said he had 30% range of motion in his shoulder as of yesterday, so that's kind of scary. It could be a Vernon spot.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I like where you're going. I think that there's a potential game stack there. Cousins is playing really well, and I think he's a guy who'll go super underowned this week as well.
Levitan, let's go to you. Who are you looking at as a kind of unconventional, a contrarian stack?
Yeah, so we saw Seattle go down to Tampa and just play some of the worst ball we've seen. I think coming home for a home game against Carolina, which, the reason that we were all over Derek Carr last week is just because this is like the ultimate funnel. They play so well up front. It's really hard to run against Carolina, but in the back end, they're just so bad. So I know James Bradbury's playing well, but as a whole, I think their secondary remains really bad. So it's kind of a get well spot, I think, for Russ, who ran for 80 yards last week. Like, can you imagine if he did anything with his arm? He would have just completely smashed. So I think going back to Russ, Graham, Baldwin, I think is pretty strong there.
Tyler Lockett, also 6 targets last week, caught 0 of them. Did have some big plays, though. I think he makes for an interesting tournament play. You need the savings. I love Russell Wilson. That was a guy I was going to talk about. This is a perfect bounce-back spot for him at home, Sunday Night Football. Keep the Sunday hammer going. I think it makes a ton of sense. The issue I have with this spot is Seattle's offensive line is really bad. That's one of the concerns about Seattle just in general. I mean, before last week, it was like, who's the best team, the Patriots, New England, or Seattle? Now everyone's saying Seattle's terrible. It's just amazing how fast stuff can change. But this is definitely a get-right spot. I love Jimmy Graham in this spot. Is Kuechly going to be out again? Is that? Do we have any news on that?
I haven't seen yet.
I mean, I know he was like tearing up after the last one, and he's really going to have to watch the concussions. That'll be interesting to monitor. But another contrarian stack that I think is interesting that I don't think many people, or at least I still think it'll go under-owned because it's gone under-owned every single week, is Colin Kaepernick with someone. I mean, you can run him out there naked for sure, but Colin Kaepernick to say Vance McDonald or something makes a ton of sense against the Chicago defense that Adam already alluded to is just completely destroyed. I mean, all their players are getting suspended. All their players are getting hurt. They're running out second, third, fourth, fifth string guys at certain positions. So I like it a lot for Kaepernick here. I mean, he's just been really good. Colin Kaepernick, didn't you put out a stat that went nuts, Adam? He's averaging more rushing yards than Todd Gurley per game.
Yeah, so even like when Chip Kelly first came here to Philly, everybody was like, oh, Chip has to get Kaepernick. Chip has to get Kaepernick. Everybody was like all about it, right? And then everybody like forgot about it. And then finally Chip does get Kaepernick, and people are surprised that he's smashing. It's just such a perfect situation. It's like the only thing that can possibly work, I think, right now for each of them offensively. Like Chip is incompetent without somebody like Kaepernick. Kaepernick's incompetent without somebody like Chip. So it's just so perfect. And yeah, I mean, the guy who won the Million Maker this past week had naked Kaepernick at like 2.3%.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with Kaepernick this week, just because at first I was like, man, he's going to be so popular next week because he had this big rushing game. He almost had the double bonus, which is obviously absurd for a quarterback. And I feel like, as time has gone on, I feel like maybe people are going to forget. They say, oh, it's just going to be an aberration for Kaepernick. And I don't think that's the case. I think this has some staying power.
Yeah, he's hit per our plus-minus metric. He's hit value expectations in 100% of the games he's started, both on DraftKings and on FanDuel. I mean, obviously he feels like a risky play, but since he became a starter, he's basically been the safest quarterback that you could start, whether that was cash games and maybe there would be some GBP upside there in certain spots. So Kaepernick is a guy who's really intriguing. I would like to get your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers versus Houston playing at home. It seems like a spot in which he might not be as highly owned as he would in another week if we didn't have New Orleans playing at home. Like your thoughts on that, guys.
Yeah, it's just, I think, a standard Aaron Rodgers week. He's a 300-yard and good bet for, I'd project like 2.5 touchdowns. I don't think there's any reason to expect anything else at this point. Rumors of his demise, I think, have been exaggerated. So, yeah, I don't see any reason not to play Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, he's in a great spot. I mean, just look at all the quarterbacks. Matt Ryan is a similar kind of play this week, too, to Aaron Rodgers. At home, the Falcons have just been crushing all year. They're more likely to shoot out as well now with Trufant out for the season. So, I mean, that's the one thing about this week relative to maybe even other weeks is the quarterback position is going to be spread out even more. I mean, we didn't talk about Stafford that much. There's just a ton of really good plays here. And that's the one reason to be optimistic about a lot of scoring this week is the quarterbacks are in really good spots.
Yeah, I actually think just looking from a roster construction standpoint, I think paying up at quarterback really might be a mistake this week because you got to pay, $7,600 for Brees, $7,500 for Brady, but then you go down and like you said, you can save $700 and go to Rodgers, you can save $900 and go to Carr, we can go down to Kaepernick. There's a guy who I'm going to bring up later that makes me throw up that I actually like in the low 5Ks. So I think there are a number of guys that you can kind of play on this cheaper end where paying up for quarterback might not be a great option this week.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get to the bold call section. Last week, I think we were all right. I think we ended up getting like 3 out of our 8 bold calls when we include the Thanksgiving pod we did. So I think that's pretty decent. And Levitan, let's start with you. Any bold calls?
Let's start with Eric. I'm interested to hear this one. It seems like he's frothing at the mouth to get this one off.
Yeah,
Brock Osweiler.
I like Brock Osweiler. This lines up so perfectly. We know Green Bay, they can get beat deep. Brock Osweiler, all he can do is throw the deep ball, and he's a terrible real-life quarterback. But, I mean, with as bad as Green Bay's defense is it really out of the question to see him go for 303 touchdowns? I don't think so, and I'm going to have – the more I look at it, at least earlier in the week, I'm going to have Brock Osweiler 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and win somebody a tournament this week.
2 Brock apologists on this pod with you right here, so you're preaching to the choir, Crane. We've talked him up in a lot of spots already this season.
Here's
this
the question,
the spot, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
I like it. I mean,
here's
Green Bay just throws too. Go ahead.
Here's a question I have: who do you think is the beneficiary of that production? Do you think it's Hopkins, or do you think it's Will Fuller or C.J. Fedorowicz? Who do you think?
I mean, I think, I do shows with the Siege all the time, and he's talking about Will Fuller every week for the last 10 weeks. This might be the first week he's right. I mean, Will Fuller's a guy that loves to go deep. I think he is in play. DeAndre Hopkins is $6,000, and if you had told somebody 2 months ago that, hey, Green Bay can't stop the pass and you're going to be able to get DeAndre Hopkins for $6,000 against them, we would have all been so excited, and I don't think he's going to be that popular this week. So I think they both could absolutely be in play. I'm probably going to have 50 Osweiler to Hopkins stacks with some Will Fuller sprinkled in and just hope for the best.
Yeah. All right, and then a real life bold call, maybe looking at a game. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm actually tying it in with this. I think that Houston is going to beat Green Bay this week.
All right, nice. Pete, let's go with you.
Well, I was going to talk about Osweiler as a bold call, and then he mentioned him as the cheap guy. I think that's really intriguing. My bold call last week about I don't know, I can't remember if I said Emmanuel Sanders here, but Emmanuel Sanders did not take home my wife, so thank goodness on that bold call not coming. There's a couple things that I think are interesting here. I'll go with Russell Wilson having a huge game. I'll say he's a top 3 quarterback as my bold call. I think there's a lot of reasons to be really bullish on him in this spot, especially if he can have a big rushing game like he did last time and just add anything on the air. In terms of a real-life bold call, I'm struggling a little bit to find a spot that I really like. At first glance, I do think Washington has a chance to beat Arizona on the road. Pretty bearish on Arizona right now, just in general with how they're playing relative to what I thought. But these home underdogs, maybe Levitan's going to take Jacksonville versus Denver. But, I'm just struggling to find a home underdog that I think is a viable play.
Levitan.
Bold call, I'm going to say Doug Martin has his breakout game of the season. I'll say over 150 total yards and 2 touchdowns for Doug Martin, who has seen as much volume as anybody over the last 2 weeks. And it's not necessarily an ideal spot in San Diego, but I think it's kind of the spot where everybody turns around and is like, oh, man, we should have been on Doug Martin at 5,700. So I don't know how popular he's going to be, but I think Doug Martin has a big game. And then for the real life, I don't actually see one yet. Can I abstain from a real life bold call for now, Freeman?
Yes, that's fair. Because you bring
just ignore my real life bold call too, because it's gonna miss, or go the opposite way.
I mean, if I make one more bold call on the Browns and they can't even cover, like I'm just getting buried with that. It's like they're in every game and then they give up a defensive touchdown and then the floodgates open. It's so brutal. But McCown did go over 3 bills. I think that was one of my bold calls.
Yeah. And Pete, you were there on Sanders last week too. So some good bold calls last week. Guys, let's get to the skill game proposition segment of the show. And Pete, I'm going to ask you to fire those silver bullets first.
Just light it all on fire. It's getting hot, giving away the equity because I thought I could get away with it, and then I just get pummeled. The first guy that I think is really interesting that I don't know. So Crane, you seem pretty high on Big Ben, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm trying to figure out because I like some quarterbacks like you said that are cheaper. I would take some of these guys that are cheaper against potentially Ben Roethlisberger or Tom Brady. Is there a game we could play where one guy gets to take 2 guys over $7K, the guy gets to take 3 guys under $6K? Would you take that, Crane, or anybody?
However you guys want to do it. I'm kind of confused about how this entire segment works, so I'm just going to listen.
So I'll take that, Pete. And I imagine Levitan would probably take that too.
Well, I'll take
So
stat.
I get to under seven wins.
Hold on, you broke up a minute there, but you broke up a minute there, but I don't know if you want this Crane, but I'll take Stafford over Big Ben straight up.
Booked. I love Big Ben in that spot. I think if I was paying up for a guy, it would be Ben Roethlisberger this week. It really would be.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have more respect for the Giants' pass defense than it sounds like you do. I think.
Yeah, I like the corners for the Giants, but yeah, hopefully my connection's stable here now for you guys. I wanted to take 3 guys under 7K versus 2, but I'll do the same thing. I'll take Stafford over Big Ben. I'd also take Russell Wilson over Big Ben.
Wow.
Ooh. I like Russ this week, but I will definitely take I'll take Ben over Russ for sure. Can I take Carr over Russ as well?
See, I love Carr. See, what I wanted to do was have Carr, Stafford, and Wilson versus like Big Ben and Brady. That's what I was shooting.
Hey, Pete, I'll do that, but Big Ben and Drew Brees.
So you got Big Ben and Brees, and I'll take Stafford. So the thing under 7K, because I have other guys. I have Matt Ryan. I have Aaron Rodgers. I think I'll take versus you. I'll mix it up. I'll go Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, and Derek Carr.
Okay. Diversify. That's good. Levitan, any guys you want to take a stand on?
I want to be low on Carson Palmer. I mean, I think we talked about 10th time for him on this show last week. And once again, he was in just an awesome spot and got lucky. David Johnson got stopped at like the 1-inch line, and he got to throw an easy touchdown. Other than that, Carson Palmer really did nothing in this awesome spot. So, yeah, I think Carson Palmer is just totally done. So if anybody wants to be on him, I mean, he's only 6K, but I'll take Tyrod. I don't know. Nobody wants Carson.
No one's buying Carson.
No.
Okay.
Well, let's go with the receiver position. I think that it's interesting. In terms of Brandon Cooks. Does anyone want to give me anyone versus Cooks?
Yeah. How much is Cooks?
He's 6,400.
Oh man, it's such a good bounce back spot for Cooks. That's the problem. Like,
I got just so burned. I took all my skill game props run Cooks last week, and he put up a freaking 0.
See, I had exactly 0 Cooks and all the Michael Thomas. So I was thrilled with what happened to Brandon Cooks last week. It basically saved my Sunday because all of my New Orleans shares was through Thomas. But I'm just looking right now, like anybody in that range. Man, I want to say DeAndre Hopkins over Cooks so bad, but I'm not sure if I have the guts to do it. You know what? Screw it.
DeAndre Hopkins. Definitely do that. That's a safe call. All right, we'll book that one. I think that's actually really close.
You want to give me 2 guys? Let me get 2 wide receivers under 5,600.
No, there's too many good guys. I can't do 2 versus 1 with Brandon Cooks.
There's not that many good guys.
I think there's 2. Well, there's not a lot of good guys, but there's enough. I mean, you take Sammy Watkins and Marvin Jones or something like that. But Jarvis Landry's cheap. I mean, it's a terrible matchup. But there's guys. All right, fine, sure, screw it. I'll give you equity.
Fine, I'll take Watkins and Snead.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I had a lot of Michael Thomas on FanDuel last week. Every stack I had on DraftKings, though, was with Cooks. I locked him in with my Breeze stack, so that was unfortunate. What do you guys think about, like, Evans, Odell Beckham, Julio, Brown? Like, does anyone want to take a stand there out of those guys?
Yeah.
I'm surprised you guys aren't higher on Odell.
That's welcome to the show.
That's Levitan.
It's not me.
Whatever you dislike about OBJ, I'll take the other side of it.
I'll take Evans, Julio, or Antonio Brown. Anyone?
I'll do Evans.
Okay.
I'll take Odell. You can have Evans.
Okay. Booked.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take all the other guys over Odell too. I like Evans, Julio, and then Brown. I'll take it. You can pick it. You want me to have Evans again?
Yeah, I'll do Evans again. I don't want Julio and Antonio. I like this week, but I think Odell is a clear number 3 for me.
Yeah, I think it's really close. I think Evans and Beckham are really close, and then Julio too. I think Brown is just a cut above, even though I do respect the Giants' corners quite a bit.
All right, so I'm going to take OBJ against Evans for both of you guys. I'm on the Crane train.
It's a good train to be on. We all want to be on the Crane train. What about running backs? I'll short Jordan Howard. Someone brought up Jordan Howard before. I'd take like Melvin Gordon or trying to think who else. I'd take Spencer Ware and potentially maybe over Howard.
I will take Howard against Ware for sure.
I'll do that.
It seems really thin. All right, sure. Screw it. Book it again. More lost equity. Just going down in flames here.
What's the point anymore?
Yeah, I just need volume. See, the guy how about this? We'll book Ware straight up, but give me a second guy under 6K to go up against Howard.
What about how about 57 or cheaper?
You're not giving me Theo Riddick. That's what I want.
I'm definitely not giving.
All right, fine. All right, done. I'll take Ware and Martin
against Riddick.
Ware and Martin against Jordan Howard.
Yeah, give it to me. So you get the one side with more equity.
Booked.
And it's just whoever has the highest points. It's not like my guys combined.
Yeah. No, I got you. Yeah, I'll take Jordan Howard.
I'll take Riddick. I'll take Riddick versus Martin.
Riddick versus Martin. Yeah, I'll take Martin.
Okay, I'll take Riddick.
I'll take Riddick there.
Yes.
I'll take Riddick.
We need to bump up Martin's projection big time on labs right now. I think we have him at like 10 points, 9.61. So we have to update that with the Levitan touch there.
Hey Pete, you want to take the opposite side of a blunt?
Oh yeah, I'll short blunt. Give me what's his price?
55.
Okay, I'll go under 55. Can I pick someone under 55? Is that cool?
Yeah.
Give me Devontae Booker. I'll take him.
I was wondering if you were going to go Booker or Hyde.
Yeah, can I take Hyde against LeGarrette Blount?
Blunt is just so boring. Like I hate taking Blunt so much. You just look at that spot and it's so good. And whatever, I'll take Blunt. I'm winning. I'm going to win all the Odell money, so that's okay.
I'll do it, but I prefer Hyde over Blunt. But
okay.
Do either of you guys does anybody want Le'Veon? Because I'll take David Johnson up top.
Wait, tell me your reasoning there, because I think that's going to be a big decision that a lot of people have if you can only roster one, David or Le'Veon.
I mean, to me, I'm pretty convinced that Pittsburgh's just going to air it out every given opportunity against the Giants, and I love David Johnson's spot. When they get a lead, they run him. They kind of go away from the run when they're trailing, but I don't think Washington's going to be able to get out in front of Arizona. And Washington, we saw them get gashed in the running game earlier. They kind of got better, but it was a lot of subpar matchups. And now I think David Johnson is just going to gash them this week.
Okay. I'll take Le'Veon just for action. I mean, even if Big Ben is extremely pass happy, like Le'Veon legit could catch 12 passes, like not an exaggeration.
These are both guys that just thrive in the passing game, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, David Johnson has 11 targets in back-to-back weeks. He has 3 receiving touchdowns the last 3 weeks. Le'Veon's going to get a bunch of targets. Sure, I'll do it just for the action. I'll take Bell over David Johnson. Screw it.
All right.
I'm doing that every time now. Just anytime it's even close, got to get volume to catch up here. Or bury myself even more.
Quick question here. I know we haven't talked about the Thursday slate, but some people will be interested in Zeke, on the road going against Minnesota. Any thoughts on him? It's not a great matchup for him, but there are people who still like him.
I don't care right now, I don't really care whether it's a good matchup or not for Zeke. I'm firing him in there. Like, we've seen that offensive line just open up some massive holes against some better run defenses. I think fading Zeke is just getting too cute. If you can get him in and you can fit him in from a salary standpoint, just play him.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. He's matchup proof. This Dallas Cowboys offense is matchup proof. But for me, it's opportunity cost. And again, it's going to be hard to fit these guys in. Thursday game, if you're playing that slate, tends to have more ownership already. So I'll probably end up with very little Zeke, not because I don't think he's a good play, more just from a game theory standpoint.
What about – I think Pete said something about Cam Meredith. You want to give me Marquise Wilson versus Cam Meredith straight up?
Sure, done.
That is depressing.
I think it's really close. That's friend of the pod, Drew Dinkmeyer's boy.
Yeah. Marquise with $2 signs.
Yeah, I know he ended up with a much better day production-wise. Target-wise, how many did he end with? I know Meredith had 9.
They both had 9 targets, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close to a coin toss. That's fine.
Does anybody want to give me Anquan against one of those guys?
No chance.
All right. You can't blame the kid for trying.
You can't try to get a guy in Coors Field versus a non-Coors Field guy. I mean, that's just not fair.
Okay. Any thoughts on Jordy Nelson? If someone was willing to take him and give me points, I would take Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for recency bias sake, everybody is all over Devontae Adams today. So just for recency bias sake, I'll give you. I'll take Jordy. I'll give you the points.
How many?
I'll give you 2 DK points.
Okay, that's fair.
All right. Here's the last thing I want to do, but it sounds sad because I think Crane's going to be on my side, but I want to buy Amari Cooper, who's my guy. I don't know what the best way to do this is. There are guys around him that are intriguing, but
You can get like Amari plus 4 points against Mike Evans.
You want to give me at a different position at running back in the same range?
who are you going to take? Melvin Gordon, Howard? Sure.
Yeah, either Melvin Gordon or LaShawn McCoy.
Hey, you can have Melvin Gordon. I'll take Amari Cooper.
All right.
Seems like a bad play by me, but here we go.
If you want to double down on that, I will absolutely take Amari Cooper.
Okay, I'll double.
You're taking Cooper. So right now we have Gordon projected for like 4 points more, but whatever.
Cooper's going to just go off.
I hope you're right, bro. That's my guy. Hope you are right.
Yep.
I'll take Doug Baldwin versus Julian Edelman or someone else like that. If you guys, I want to buy some Doug Baldwin.
Actually, hey, Pete, just to back this up for a second, would you do Cooper and I'll do Odell?
No.
Just curious. I just want to see how free you are.
I'm giving away equity, but I'm not gonna go so crazy. You can take Odell. I'll take Cooper and someone under 5K, and you can take Odell. How about that?
Okay.
All right, so I'll take Cooper and under 5K receiver. My hunch is I'm going to take Marvin Jones, but let me just make sure there's something better.
There's nothing better.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill, Boyd, Mohamed Sanu's. I'm going to go with my boy Marvin Jones. I like that.
Okay. So sorry, Pete, I cut you off. You were talking about Doug Baldwin.
Yeah, I like buying Doug Baldwin. If anyone wants to take that, there's a lot of guys I like in that high 6K range. I also want to buy Tyrell Williams, so I'd take Tyrell Williams over DeAndre Hopkins if you want to do that again, Crane.
Okay, I'll do that. I really like DeAndre this week. I think it's just such a beautiful bounce back spot. It's easy to overlook him, isn't it?
Yeah, I really like him too. I mean, he's you guy you're getting this many targets for number one. He just hasn't had the touchdowns, and that could easily change in this spot.
Yeah, I think the question is, like, is the Texans' offense so broken? Like, we saw the Eagles, like, it was a perfect spot, right? And, like, they just don't have the players or the capacity to put up big numbers. Like, DGB, in theory, Wentz and DGB, like, should have gone off last night, or Matthews, But, like, I don't know. I'm concerned that the offense is just so broken. But at 6K, it's kind of hard for Hopkins to fail.
My biggest fear with Houston is that offensive line is broken. They're letting in so much pressure. In Green Bay, they have a really good pass rush grade. But if you look at kind of Green Bay's season, a lot of that pass rush grade has come from earlier in the year. They've been relatively average lately. And if that offensive line can just give Osweiler any time at all this week, he is just going to air it out to Hopkins and to Will Fuller.
Guess how many times this year DeAndre Hopkins has exceeded his salary-based expectation?
0. Okay.
And we're in week 13.
It's coming, baby.
Yeah, Levitan, you're just making his case for him.
Nobody's gonna have DeAndre Hopkins this week. It's gonna be so great.
Oh God. And the worst part is I thought that Brock and Hopkins were gonna have just a huge year, and Fuller. I'm talking about preseason.
They're waiting until fantasy football playoffs. That's what they're waiting.
Yeah, everybody's already dead.
Yep.
I do like Fuller a lot. I think he's an intriguing option for sure.
All right.
You can double stack them too. You can absolutely do Fuller, Hopkins, and Osweiler.
I think Pete, did you get some Baldwin action or no?
No, we can pass. It's all good. I think I'm capped out. I'm ready to.
I'll give you Sam. I'll take Watkins against Baldwin.
Okay, done.
All right. Any tight ends, or are we good? Let's do just a little tight end action here.
You wanted Hill, it sounded like, Levitan.
No. I brought him up as a guy to try to fade at high ownership. He's 2,500 though. Like, there's no way we can make a prop. He's literally like free.
Okay, that's fair. I'll buy Eric Ebron if anyone wants to give me someone versus Ebron.
Everybody wants to buy Eric Ebron.
Yeah, he's going to be super popular.
Okay, I will buy. Yeah, that's pretty ugly. I'd buy Vance McDonald,
How much is he?
2,900.
Ugh. No.
I'll take Doyle Green Beckham over Vance.
Oh, I'm not giving you another position outside of tight end. Come on, Levitan. Come on, buddy.
I only have 5 tight ends on my entire list here. Hill, Ebron, Kelsey, Eifert, and Graham.
Is it possible, and it might not be, I want to hear what your guys' take on this. Is it possible that the Hill increase in snaps is just a blip and Fleener gets some run this week?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I think he's a good fade. I really do. I mean, we don't know what Sean Payton's doing. We really don't. Nothing would surprise me.
We didn't talk enough. There wasn't enough talk about the narrative between Sean Payton, Greg Williams. They're the meta game and the revenge factor and piling it on. That was not talked about enough last week.
I swear it never even crossed my mind.
Yeah,
and I was mentioning a buddy afterwards, and I go, why didn't you tell me about this? Because he's like, we all have those friends that are just like message you every single narrative in the history that's upcoming in fantasy football. And I'm like, why didn't I hear about this? Because again, I live in St. Louis. The Rams should have crossed my mind at some point. Never even thought about it.
What that was a real narrative, especially when the coach has the opportunity to pound it at the end too. Like if the Saints are up 28-0 in that game and it wasn't turning into a shootout, there's still a lot of chance that the Saints could have just been trying to pile it on, which we should definitely be aware of going forward. But there's no one really a tight end that I feel passionate about. I mean, I'll take Jimmy Graham versus any tight end you want.
If I knew Jordan Reed was going to play, but I mean, it doesn't sound like he's going to.
Him and Gronk, and then it's down to Olsen, Kelsey. I mean, how about this? I'll take Jimmy Graham, and you can take any 2 tight ends under 4K. I mean, that gives you Ebron and someone.
Yeah, I'll take Ebron and Fleener. I don't hate Fleener's upside this week at 1% ownership.
I like that. Levitan, I assume you want that free equity.
No, I actually don't. I hate every tight end this week other than Ebron and Jimmy Graham.
Okay. Friedman, you're not pouncing on anything there?
Man, I think I'm gonna pass on that too. I want to take it, but I don't have the faith in Fleener to make me want to take it.
Okay, that's more than fair. All right, guys, good show. I think we should wrap it up here. We have been speaking with Eric Crane, Adam Levitan, and Peter Jennings on Twitter at Eric Crane, Adam Levitan, and CSURAM88. You can follow me on Twitter at Matt F. The Oracle. I'm Matthew Friedman, and this has been the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for Week 13. If you like the show, please rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Podbean, and don't forget to check out our NFL dashboard with positional breakdowns out on Thursday and previews for each game out by Friday. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck, and we will see you next week.